just like they did in the chicken and the hog industry. It's not rocket science. It's already happened. It's going to happen again. We're in the middle of the wreck. The Da Vinci cattle, the cattle are eating less versus the other cattle. The difference in your bottom line, people say that we're not taking care of the environment and land. That's absolutely false. And ranchers are probably the best environmentalists in the world because I have to make a living off of it next year. It's absolutely insane. You can run 30% more cattle on the same acreage without buying any extra feed. It's not magic, it's math. It's the Da Vinci difference. So I'm pretty scruffy right now. I am trying to put the bull sale catalog together. So I don't know how many thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of numbers I'm looking at, along with the quality of the bulls, along with everything else, trying to make a sale order, trying to make the sale catalog so it's actually more readable for the people and beneficial for us to have a smooth operating sale. This morning I was on the phone for an hour and a half with our lawyers. So we were in there for an hour and a half. So my eyes are probably a little bloodshot from all of that. Uh, Actually, I haven't been out doing some of the stuff that I would usually do as much as normal because of all of those things. But right now it's um, 20 hours a day just crunching numbers and putting catalog together. And then you have your phone calls that you talk to the customers and this interruption and that interruption. So this year it's a little different for us. We usually start calving our heifers this time of year, and I did that on purpose. One of the reasons was so that I could calve all night and that I could stay up all night and I didn't have to answer the phone. This year we changed that, and so it's a little different trying to get everything done in the middle of the day when everybody's calling you and you're getting phone call after phone call and meeting and everything that goes on in our lives right now. But it's working pretty well, actually. I feel like we're going to win. And that's never ever been an option, whether we win or not. It's just how bad or how worse we win. I chose this job, so whatever, how many hours it takes, however many headaches you have, how much cups of coffee you have to have, or whatever you have to do, that's what you do. That's anytime you get a job and you ask for the job, you probably ought to do whatever it takes to win. Just that way, I'm not going to lose. So all the time we get people that say they don't think that we can run more cattle, 30% more cattle on the same acreage. And quite frankly, the universities and the newspapers, the cattle publications and whatnot would say just exactly that. But my argument would be, if that's the case, how come our competitors in the protein industry, in the chickens and the hogs and the dairy cattlemen, that's their number one selection trait. And they have completely and totally changed the genetic base to work for them. If it's not possible, why could they do it and we can't do it? And the reason is we've never tried. We're in the year 2025 or 2026 now, and seed stock industry is so worried about making fat, pretty cattle and feeding them and giving them haircuts and selling EPDs and numbers that they won't spend the time, the effort, and the money to purchase the equipment and do the feed efficiency testing. Because what would happen if the number one top selling seed stock person in the world found out their cattle were very inefficient, which they probably would. If you're sitting there, some of these guys are selling bulls for $18,000 to $20,000. They're doing very well. They're becoming very wealthy. And what happens when you find out that you're selling cattle that are actually costing people money instead of making them money? What happens when that happens? Uh, pretty big change of events. What they did in the chicken and the hog industry 20 years ago, and everybody still remembers it, they got a big, where we're talking chickens, they got yolk on their face, they got egg on their face. But what they did is they were making these animals that grew so fast and got so big that they literally couldn't get up to get to eat. They were Neanderthals and they couldn't get up and get to the food. Basically, every single thing we're seeing in the beef cattle industry has already been done in the chicken industry. We're just 30 years behind them. So most of what I do is watching what they did that didn't work and the wrecks that they had that we don't need to get into, and then what they did do so we can move forward with the stuff that works. It's not that difficult. We all need to make money or we can't survive. But what they've done is they've pushed the envelope to where all of the genetics are for growing. It's just exactly what happened in the pig and the chicken industry. and they're growing them. And so this is just going to escalate. I talked to a friend that was the number 2 guy in the cattle industry at one point in time, and he told me that we're going to have 1,500-pound carcasses. They won't be able to get up. They can't eat. They're not going to make any money. They can't get bread. Every single thing that we're trying not to do in the ranching side that we do really well, they're going to ruin. Just like they did in the chicken and the hog industry. It's not rocket science. It's already happened. It's going to happen again. We're in the middle of the wreck. So you're not really creating an animal that's going to be better. What you're doing is you're basically saying we have cheap corn right now. And cheap corn means bigger weights. The cheaper the corn is, the more weight we can put on an animal in order to make money. If we have expensive corn, they want smaller animals because the corn cost is more than the gain or the beef. Right now we have cheap corn, so we're just going to keep making them bigger and bigger. And so if you're making a lot of money right now, which the ranchers are doing pretty well, and you have the opportunity to put another 500 in your pocket, you're going to think that's a good idea. But the problem with that whole entire deal is you're not making more pounds of beef per ranch. With the feedlot level, they can make more money because they can feed them longer. And at the packer, it makes them happier too because now they have more beef. So it's all supply and demand. We have a shortage of supply. If we can increase that supply by getting more beef in an animal, each animal, because you can't just, in the cattle industry, you can't just make it out of thin air. It's a 2 to 3 year process to grow more. So right now it's 2 to 3 years before we can actually get more. We can't do it any other way. It's just the way of the life cycle of the cow. And so the only way you can do it is to add more corn, add more weight per animal. So you're going to make these huge animals. But what that's going to do is it's going to give the negative message to the seed stock people and the cattlemen. They're going to say, well, if I'm selling these cows for this amount, what if I can sell this much more pounds per animal? They shouldn't be looking at that. They should be saying, how about making this many pounds more on the ranch? It's never this zero-sum game on the ranch level is always pounds of beef per ranch. It's never pounds of beef per cow. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You've got two different types of feed for a cow. You've got your pasture, which is your ranch land, which is extremely expensive. And so you can only run so many cows on a ranch. So that would be pounds of beef per acre because you're probably running the land pretty well. You're probably already managing that. So you're growing as much grass as you can. And then the second thing is when you have to feed them, which in most ranches you have to feed them extra, and now you have to feed more pounds of hay per pound of beef. And so both of them are the exact same solution and both of them are a cost. 70% of the cost of ranching, raising cattle is feed included. It's either the feed, the equipment, whatever, but it's all through the feed. It's the low-hanging fruit. I mean, if you can dissect 70% of your costs and you can cut that down by 5%, isn't that the place you start? One of the ways that we are able to find out which animals are more feed efficient is through what we call residual feed intake. They call it RFI, abbreviated down to RFI, but the residual feed intake basically says if you have a certain amount of animals and their average eating habit is so much, and this is on per pound of body weight. So if you got a 1,000-pound animal, he should eat in that pen, let's say 25 pounds. But if you can measure it, which you can only do this, there's only a few people in the world that actually can measure it with the feed efficiency testing systems. But if you can measure that, and then you can basically say this one's eating 18 pounds and the other one's eating 30 pounds when the average is 25. Residual feed intake would be the difference between what he should have ate in that pen, what the average of that pen would have ate per pound of body weight. So I weigh different than, I'm smaller or bigger than somebody else. I should eat different than the guy beside me if they're a different weight. But what if the guy beside me is the exact same weight? Whichever one of us eats more or less is the most efficient guy to maintain or gain weight, however you want to look at it. And I think that goes into the microflora in the gut too. I mean, I think it goes into how does your body digest versus how does my body digest. I don't know any other way that it could work. And I might be wrong on it, but I can tell you that it all can be monitored, just like they did the pigs, chickens, dairy cattle. we have ways to figure all of that out. But it is a genetic, it's a genetic process one way or the other, whether it's the microflora in the one's gut that they can produce a different microflora than the other one. I don't know what it is, but it's all genetics. It still comes down to genetics. So if you're going to talk about feed efficiency and we're going to argue the fact as to whether or not it can actually be done, um, what I can actually absolutely say is not only have I proven it with the number of cattle we're running versus the number we haven't, the easiest way we can prove it is we feed every animal through a vertical mixer when we're feeding them. So we have the exact weight. Everything's measured to every animal. And right now, if you look at the nutrition guidelines, and this is nutrition for cattle all over the United States, a cow to get through the winter, and they're not as cold as we are, takes a lot more energy where we are than the average, but just average, they're going to eat somewhere between 2.2 and 2.5% of body weight. So if you take a 1,200-pound cow, she's going to be eating somewhere between 28 and 30 pounds of feed a day. And right now, we can get by with our cows on about 18. If you take an 1,100-pound heifer, and ours are actually gaining weight, but the nutritionists will say there's no way they can gain weight on your ration at 2.2 to 2.5% of body weight, which would be 25 to 27 pounds. Our heifers are gaining weight on 16. So if you want to do the math on the difference of that, if you're feeding for like 150 days of the year and your alfalfa or your feed costs right now are probably about $180 a ton. In Sublette County, they figure 3 to 4 ton of hay. Right now, we're feeding 1,500 pounds a year. So we're feeding less than half. So they're feeding, let's say 6 to 800 pounds, or that would be the typical. And we're feeding about 150 or 130. And we run 3,000 animals right here. So do that math times 3,000 and you'll start putting some numbers in that'll basically say, oh yeah, we need to do this. That's very much on the low end. I say 30% because I know for a fact we're at least 30%. I don't want to, as we manage, maybe we manage a little bit better. So I know we can go way past 30%, but is that part of our management? I don't know. Maybe it is. So I'm going to be a little bit conservative when I say that. But you start talking about $300 to $400 to $500 per head savings per year. Um, Even if you're only running a 300 cow operation, that's $100,000. That's pretty good vacation. And one thing that we did, or I did a little bit earlier, and I think I was using a 500 cow operation, which is probably a little bigger than the average person. But in today's market, if you were running the Da Vinci cattle, the cattle are eating less versus the other cattle. The difference in your bottom line, because you would have lost cows, you wouldn't have had as many cows on your place versus gained cows. And the difference in just the price alone, feeding the same amount, running the same everything, same tractor, doing everything. You might have to buy a little more vaccine or another tag or two. But it was over $1 million profit on a 500 cow operation just by the difference in today's market with today's calf prices is over $1 million on a 500 cow operation if you were running the right cattle versus the wrong cattle. So you'd figure that the rest of the world decreased their cow numbers by 25% the last 10 years, and our customers increased by 15%. And right now, calves are selling for over $3,000 each. So yeah, yeah. And so when you start talking the profit, it's pretty easy to say the profits because uh, X, Y, and Z is what the other guys are taking to survive, and the other guy's making $1 million more. That's all what they can put in their pocket, or that's what they can buy a new tractor with, or that's what they can, I don't know, vacation, whatever you want to do. But it's an insane number. It's an insane number for and straight across the board, I'm looking at every time I talk to a Lucky 7 Angus customer, I ask them, I say, are you running more cows or less? And everyone will say, oh, yeah, we didn't decrease. We didn't decrease. I'm going, well, how come we have a shortage of cattle if nobody decreased? It didn't come from it didn't come from our customers. Same geographic areas. My first calf heifers, which is the ones that you have to feed way better. I mean, that's like a kid. You have to feed a kid. He wants to eat all the time. He's still growing. He's got to eat versus an adult that doesn't need to eat as much, right? So my heifers, the kids were on one side of the fence, right across the highway from the other side of the fence. And they were saying that they were feeding their cows 30 pounds a day and they were hungry. They couldn't hardly take it. Mine were on the other side and they weren't even on hay. My young ones, and they were complaining about how much they were feeding their cows, and right on the just across the road on the same exact country, everything. Mine were doing just fine without getting any hay. Now, I'm not saying they're not eating something; they have to eat something, but their cows weren't capable of eating the forage that was available. They had to feed them 30 pounds a day, and they're saying, "Oh man, it's killing us." And I'm going, "Well, it should be." Look across the fence. Look across the fence and see how to do it. 2 years ago, we had the toughest winter on history, and we were feeding what we always do. We had to feed a little bit more because it was cold, dirty cold, 2, 3 foot of snow, coldest winter in Fremont County history. And the neighbor basically was arguing with my manager from here, Steve, and he was basically saying, "I don't believe any of that feed efficiency stuff." And Steve just looked at him and he says, "You're buying hay from us and you don't believe in it." How does this work? You're buying hay from us. We didn't make any more hay, but we're selling hay to you. Neither one of us changed the cow numbers. I probably increased my cow numbers and he probably didn't. And I'm still selling him hay and he's arguing whether or not feed efficiency is right or not. And it's like, you're buying hay from me. So as you're looking at stocking rates and feed efficiency, we know that we're 30% higher as well. So stocking rate is how many cattle you can run on a pasture, how many cattle you can run um, wherever it is without feeding them. That would be the stocking rate on a place. And so if you can run 30% more cattle, it's like almost a 30% more profit. I mean, you have your fixed costs that you have to pay. You have to get your vaccines. You have to have your cow cost of buying the cow or whatever. And you have some costs available, but it's not that far off of a 30% increase. So whatever percent of number of cows you can run, as long as you can wean off the same weight calf, it's pretty close. I mean, you're probably losing 20 or 30% of that. So 30% would actually probably eat about 20 or turn into 24%. 30% more cows is only 24% more profit, but that's profit. When you're talking about running a business, you have your inputs and you have your expenses and you have your income, right? And so once you get past your break even, it's profit. So we're talking profits. We're not talking just better. We're talking in the profit side of this. One of the biggest costs to doing business is buying land. Land is extremely expensive. It's really hard to buy land and pay it off with a cow in a typical market. Maybe not so much today. It's a little better deal, but it's extremely difficult. So the more cows we can run on the land we already have without having to put more expenses on more. You got to maintain it. But the thing that's really good about the rancher is I know I'm going to be in business for 20 years. And if I basically ruin my land, where do I go next year? Yeah, we will be taking care of our land. That's what ranchers do as good as anybody. The theory that people say that we're not taking care of the environment and land, that's absolutely false. And ranchers are probably the best environmentalists in the world because I have to make a living off of it next year. It's like, oh, am I stupid? No, we was able to buy a new piece of property. Um, Typically, when you buy more land, you have to get a down payment and then you have to go buy cows. And because we were feed efficient, we were able to increase the amount of cows that we had. So when an opportunity came up to buy the neighbor's ranch, we were able to sell some of those cows to make the down payment. And not only that, but we had enough cows left over, extra cows, to stock the place all in 1 year. Win-win in the greatest cow market in the world. I mean, you get a down payment and put the cows on them. Nobody gets to do that. It doesn't just come down to feed efficiency. It's the breed up. Some of the new typical genetics are not being able to get bred up, et cetera, et cetera. Our cows are breeding up extremely well. They're doing everything they're supposed to do. So every year, we're not only increasing our herd, but we're actually selling cows to those that are trying to increase as well. It's a pretty good deal. If you're buying the feed efficient animals, and you're the first right off the bat when you buy a Lucky Seven bull, the first year when you get a calf off of him, if that calf is 15% or 30% more feed efficient, half of his genetic base is going to be off of that bull. So 15% more feed efficient because it's half. He's out of the bull, not the cow. Same cow that she was running the year before, and she's on the same grass, so she's going to produce the same amount of milk. So day one, what you're going to have is you're going to have a 75-pound increase in weaning weights. And we're seeing that quite a bit because 15% of 500-pound calf is now 75 pounds. But when you buy these bulls and you keep your own replacement heifers, then those replacement heifers are going to be more feed efficient too. They're going to eat less all of the time. That's going to increase value on your ranch. And right now, we're topping the market everywhere we go. So the Lucky Seven Angus cattle are topping the market everywhere they go. But that's not the biggest cost benefit, or that's not your biggest economic benefit. Your biggest economic benefit is the amount of more cattle you get to run and less feed that you're going to put out there because you've got a genetic base, because you retained those heifers out of that same feed efficient herd. Last year, we were trying to calve heifers, and we went to the calving lot. We had cattle in it, and then I wanted to take those cattle and put them somewhere else. So there's cattle there, and I got to looking around. I had no place to calve my heifers. It was really a weird feeling because I was wondering what's going on. So finally, I woke up and I decided to count cattle. So when I counted the cattle, we have twice as many cows on this ranch as we did, or this wintering area, than we did 10 years prior to that. And we never created any more infrastructure. So we had twice as many cows, which is a good thing. The bad part of it is I didn't have no place to put them. That's my bad place. So we decided to build the infrastructure to carry more cows, which we just did. And while we were doing that, we ended up putting in a new feed efficiency test system. We've got about $1.5 million to $2.5 million in feed efficiency testing and systems that we were using before. But these systems were pretty dinosaurish. You had to be extremely good. So we did all the research that we could. We found out a new system from the Netherlands called the RIC2 Discover system from the Hokum Farms. And we purchased that, and we're putting that in this year. It's a huge investment, but what's it worth to actually have legitimate good data? These systems right here is going to be 100% accurate, where I believe, and I'm pretty positive of that because I've been all over the world in speaking events for feed efficiency. And I have never, ever met another person that understands how to run one of the old dinosaur Vitality or C-Lock systems to an extent where they get accurate data. I can tell you, Stephen Delane, my managers, will break your legs if you don't do it right. And so what they have done is they've got a 98% accuracy or better. Nobody else is even close to that. And so what the old systems have that was a fault was they was able to get in there and root feed out. That feed's never accounted for. The other part of the problem with them is if you have to feed at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. perfectly, no hired man wants to do that. So what they'll do is they'll overfeed so they can come back and feed a little bit earlier or a little bit later the next time. If you overfeed, the EID tag in their ear gets too high, and those reads don't come back. And according to Vitality, 82% accuracy is 100% accurate, and they're going to give 100% accurate. So if you got animals, because of their behavior, the aggressive ones are going to be the first one at the bunk. So they're always the one that's going to get that feed that's at the top. And every one of them is going to get a misread. So their 82% accuracy now becomes 100% inaccurate. Not only that, but the animal that goes in there and roots the feed out, it also becomes 100% inaccurate. This new RIC2 Discover RIC2 Discover system has a lid on top of it, so they can't kick any feed out. It's capable of being cleaned every single day, that no other program or no other system in the world is even close to that. And not only that, but the feed, every ounce that they eat, because of the way it's designed, is perfect. So we should be able to get so close to 100% accuracy that nobody else has been able to achieve. And the reason that I know that everybody else's accuracy is not good is because if you locate a feed efficient animal, let's say you locate a feed efficient bull, and then you locate a feed efficient cow, if you were to cross them and we have genetic relevance, that calf out of them should be feed efficient if there's a genetic correspondence, which there absolutely is, because we know that because we've seen the chickens and the hogs and the dairy people. We know there's going to be one. But Lucky Seven Angus is the only place that I've ever been that we can say, if I cross this bull pedigree to this pedigree, you're going to get proven feed efficiency every time. It's like setting a clock, and now we're 3 and 4 generations of that. And I've talked to every other person in the world that's trying to get feed efficiency, and I've never seen that. And the reason that is 35% or 33% of your test is on aggression on those other feed efficiency tests. 33% of the uh, data that you think is feed efficiency is on poor doing cattle, and 33% is on feed efficiency. You put those 33% in one bowl and you mix them all up, and then you try and find feed efficiency. What's the chances you're going to do it on an accurate basis? And that's what the old systems do 100% of the time, which this new system will never do. We, like I said, have Stephen Delane, which are the architects of feed efficiency. Break your leg if you do it wrong. It's going to be done right, and that's just the way it is. Even me as owner, if I feed and I do it wrong, they call me up and they threaten to kill me. So they know how to do it exactly right. We've got a 98%, but we will be so much better with this new Rick 2 Discover. State of the art. We're so proud to have it, and we're so excited to be using it. We were the first individually owned feed efficiency or testing system in the United States. And I mean that because you always get the universities or some of the, those things that get all this free money, because these things are expensive. Like I said, I think we got almost $2.5 million into our first testing system. And so nobody wants to put that money in there. But if you're a university, you get it. Then you get a bunch of kids that go out there and party all night, and they come out and they don't get it. You don't get any good data out of it. But we were the first individually owned in the United States to get it was called a Grow Safe system at that time. Now that we're the first individually owned in the United States to get the RIC 2 Discover, which is heads and tails above it. We're the first person in the world that had industry standards on the high elevation PAP testing. Everybody else PAP tested, but their data was meaningless because they didn't have standards. You have to have standards. They have to be at high elevation for a minimum of 60 days. We do it 100 days and a very high elevation of 7,700 feet. We're the #1 feed efficient program in the world. We're the first and only to ever promote and have a 4-year guarantee on bulls. Nobody else does that. And not only that, we're one of the first people in the world to ever have bulls sold that weren't trimmed, clipped, and prettied up. They're sold in their working clothes, just like they're going to be on your ranch. Doesn't that make sense? That's why we can call our cattle the Da Vinci cattle, because they're simply different. They look the same, they act the same, but because everything we've done with them and all of these firsts and all of the information and all the scientific data that we have, they're simply going to perform different. As mentioned earlier, you have 2 race cars, and you don't know which one's going to win because you don't know what's under the engine. And that's the difference with what we have. They look the same, they act the same. We dominate at the feedlot, we dominate at the packing house, we dominate for grade and yield. But you don't know the difference until you look at the engine. And you can only understand that through scientific testing, and the rest of the world simply doesn't have scientific testing behind them, and we do. So what we're doing in this podcast and what my whole entire goal is, so years ago I said I wanted to have the most profitable customers in the industry, which I believe we're already there. But my goal today is to have every hardworking mom and pop in rural America. We can make sure that every man, woman, and child is going to be able to eat. Hardworking mom and pop in rural America, we can make sure that every man, woman, and child is going to be able to eat 5 to 10 pounds of beef. Beef is the most nutritious source of food in the world. And you can even look at biblical standards and it'll kind of prove that. So we can make America healthy again. We can make the world healthy again. Let's quit eating corn chips. Let's quit eating soda pops and sugar treats. And let's start eating beef so everybody can be healthy and happy and live life. That's what our goal is for all of this. A hardworking mom and pop in rural America, we can make sure that every man, woman, and child is going to be able to eat 5 to 10 pounds of beef. Beef is the most nutritious source of food in the world. And you can even look at biblical standards and it'll kind of prove that. so we can make America healthy again. We can make the world healthy again. Let's quit eating corn chips. Let's quit eating soda pops and sugar treats. And let's start eating beef so everybody can be healthy and happy and live life. That's what our goal is for all of this. So stay tuned for episode 4, where we're going to cover one of the biggest parts that you're losing money and you're getting ripped off, and that is cost of calf per bull. In today's high prices, with the bulls bringing as much as you need to have them breed 100 head of cows or more, which Lucky 7 Angus has the only 4-year guarantee to achieve that. The typical is 25 to 30 head. So we're going to go into exactly how much money you have per calf and how much money you're losing just on your bull purchases right now. Well, thank you for listening to the Lucky 7 Ranch podcast. And don't forget, just because you wear the hat doesn't make you a cowboy.